Hi my Polygon primitives, it's your 3D girl AB, and in this video I will be discussing how to think like a 3D modeler. So 3D modeling is basically problem solving. You're using Polygon primitives to make a model and you're going from point A to point B. As you're modeling, you're asking yourself questions: what would be the best way to make the model and how to go from one step to the other step most efficiently. So in this video, I'm going to be focusing on things that you should keep in mind while 3D modeling. So first, I want to talk about n-gons and tris. So when it comes to 3D modeling, there are two things that you want to stay away from when it comes to faces, and that is n-gons and tris. So an n-gon is any side or any face that has more than 4 sides. So of course, this is how you get it once you load it, and you have to make sure to get rid of this n-gon. You can get rid of the n-gon by either just deleting it or making sure that you can turn these into quads, which is what I usually do in my other videos. Here, if we look at this polygon primitive, you can see there are 3-sided faces known as tris. Now, when it comes to 3D modeling, you should also stay away from tris. You can have a tri in certain exceptions, but it's very, very rare. So it is best to have quads. And the reason why quads are very important is that it makes UV unwrapping easier, which makes your model easier to texture. Now I will be talking about topology. So topology is basically the arrangement of faces, vertices, and edges on your model. And you want to have what is known as clean topology. So here I have two models of an apple, and if you just look at them, they both look okay. They both look like apples. You don't see anything wrong with them. They're very, very simple. But if I were to select both of them and I go to my edit mode, you will notice that the topology is different. So if you look at the apple on your left, it has what is known as clean topology. It's all quads, it's all flowing, it's clean and more evenly distributed. Now if you look at the one to your right, the topology is not clean. So here, yes, you can see that they're quads, but as you can see, it is not flowing. For example, some of the vertices look like they're going in their own direction. If you look here closely, if I press A and select everything, and I bring down the levels viewport and look at it, you can actually see that there are n-gons when there should just be quads. So you can see the topology on this apple is not clean. So if I bring back up my levels viewport, and if you just go to your object mode and look at both apples, even though they both look the same, this apple does not have a clean topology, and this will cause some trouble when it comes to UV unwrapping. Now this is a simple apple, but for a more complicated model, if the topology is not clean, it does make a little bit of a struggle when it comes to UV unwrapping. So now I'm going to talk about keeping certain parts of a model separate. So here are two models of a lamp for a ceiling. The one on your right used different polygon primitives to make different parts of the lamp. So these are different parts of the lamp holder, and inside is the light bulb. The one on your left was all made from just one object. Now, one rule when it comes to 3D modeling is that if it's separate in real life, you keep it separate on the model. So for example, as we know, when it comes to lamps, the light bulb is made separately. The different parts of the lamp holder is made separately. And so for the model, that's the correct way to do it. And here's why. Keeping different parts of the model separate helps to avoid certain problems. So for example, as a modeler, it helps you to be able to make certain edits easier. So for example, if I notice that there's something wrong with the light bulb, I can zoom in and try to edit it, but it can be frustrating. If I want to edit the light bulb, instead of zooming in, I can just select different parts of the lamp holder, hide it, and just focus on the light bulb. Versus with the one on the right, if I wanted to edit the light bulb, I would probably have to select all these faces for just the light bulb area, which of course would become a hassle. If you're not just a 3D modeler, but also a texture artist, or you're handing it over to a texture artist, the texture artist will be able to texture different parts of the lamp versus having to select faces and texturing just those faces. It also makes it easier if you're a part of an animation pipeline for your animator. Keep in mind that when it comes to animation and games, a story is being told and a story has separate scenes, and you may or may not know what is to be done with the models in those scenes. So for example, for a short animation, there might be a scene where a character has to unscrew the light bulb out of the lamp holder. Therefore, the light bulb should be separate from the lamp holder. Not only should you keep this part separate, but you should also name each part, and you do that by going into your outliner. So this area right here is an outliner. And here you can see different collections. You know they're a collection because you see what looks like a box. Now in this collection, I'm going to open it. That's where I have my lamps in. And here you can see lamp 1, which would be this lamp over here. If you look, I have different parts of it named. Lamp holder, light bulb, small lamp holder. So right now I have the lamp holder selected. I have the small lamp holder selected. And right now the light bulb is selected, and you can see the light bulb here. Now here, if I select this, you notice that it's called sphere. That is because I had not named this yet. Since I have not named it yet, it is still called sphere because a sphere is what I loaded to make this part. So I can rename it, and I can call it what it is, which is a shade. And now different parts of the lamp is named. I cannot do that with the one on the right because I used one object to make the whole thing. So therefore I can only call it lamp 2, but I can't, for example, name this part light bulb, name this part shade, name this part lamp holder, because I had made it with one object. Now why using the outliner is important. If you're a part of a pipeline, you will have to hand your models over to someone else. It could be a texture artist, it could be a rigger. So for example, if it is a rigger and the rigger is looking at your 3D model, the rigger would need to select different parts to rig. Now earlier I shown how when it came to the shade, it was still named sphere at first because after I load the sphere and I kept editing it, I did not rename it. If you don't rename your polygon primitives, for example, if I bring in a cube and I make a certain part with it, it would still be called cube. So imagine you're a rigger, you get a model, nothing is named, and you look in your outliner and all you see is cubes, spheres, and cylinders. It's going to be a little bit confusing, and here's why it's going to be a little bit confusing. Yes, the rigger can select just like this, but sometimes when it comes to 3D modeling, sometimes it's a little bit harder. For example, there might be a part inside the light bulb that he needs to reach, and yes, he can zoom in as much as possible, but that can still be tricky. And to make things easier, it would be easier for him to just go inside of the outliner, look for that part by name, and just select it, and then he can rig it. So for example, for a more complicated model like a car, if you model a car, you would want to name the wheels separate, the windshield separate, the windows separate, the seat separate, and the more complicated parts of a car, so that the rigger can just go in the outliner and search for it. And the more complicated the model is, which meaning it has more parts, if he knows the name of that part, he can just go into the search, type it in, and look for that part right there. Now I'm going to discuss the different types of modeling. So as a 3D modeler, you should also know the different types of modeling. So the two main ones I'm focusing on right now is organic 3D modeling and hard surface 3D modeling. So organic 3D modeling is when you model a living thing. For example, in this case, a fruit. It could be a person, an animal. Hard surface modeling is when you do models of objects. So for example, here is a table set. So when it comes to different types of modeling, the general rules are the same. Like for example, all the rules that I stated before, you must have clean topology, still use your outliner, keep the different parts separate. However, there is going to be some slight differences. So for example, if I select everything here and I go to my edit mode and you look at the topology, if you notice with the apple, yes, it still flows, but for example, the faces are not all the same size and it's not as uniform because it's organic. Versus if you look at this tablecloth, all the faces are the exact same size. It is also more uniform if you look at the topology. So keep in mind that different types of modeling will call for different types of things. Now I'm going to discuss the importance of a center line. So here I have two models of a queen chess piece, and I'm going to press 1 to look at my front view. Now if I select both queens, if you look at them, you see that there's no difference. However, in my edit mode, you will see the topology, and if I go to wireframe, you will see that when it comes to the queen on your left, there is a center line right here. Versus when I go to the queen on the right, if you look at the center, it's a little bit tricky, but it's just faces. There's no center line. Why is this important? So when it comes to 3D modeling, you must do your best, especially if your model is fully symmetrical, to have that center line right there. It makes modeling easier because it helps to correct mistakes. So how does it help correct some mistakes? So right now I'm in face mode. So let's say I accidentally model something wrong on one side, but the other side is correct. Instead of manually fixing one side, I can select all the faces on one side. And then with all those faces selected, I can just delete it. And then I can easily just duplicate and mirror this side, and then there's the correction. Versus when it comes to this model, for example, if I select faces on one side, as you can see, these faces right here in the front are not selected, and I can't just delete and easily duplicate it. So do your best, especially if your model is symmetrical, to keep this center line right here. So those are just some of the things you should keep in mind when 3D modeling.